welcome to the CSR Journal. Grassroots development has been a goal of many in this country. There are many corporate players also playing their role, their bits in this area. One such player is Piramal Group, which has been doing social activities in the rural and urban areas as well. Today we are going to speak to Mr. Paresh Parasnis, CEO of Piramal Foundation, and know about their goals and ideology behind their CSR activities. Hello and welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So we would like to know about the activities that you have been doing in the social area. I believe there are 4 major verticals.
That's right.
So if you can tell us about those verticals in details.
Sure. So the Piramal Foundation in a structured form as the corporate philanthropy arm of the group started about 8 years ago, 2007. Today the work of the foundation covers, as you said, 4 areas. One is in education, where we work in the space of education leadership in government schools. So to amplify quickly, I will say that it's working with headmasters in government schools in helping them kind of discover or upgrade their leadership capacity with the ultimate aim of improving learning levels in government schools. That's number one. The second area is in the work of primary healthcare. Our idea in healthcare is really working with governments. So almost I would say more than 85–90% of our work in that space is with state governments. We work with 8 states today. And the idea is, how do we work with government in helping them improve the quality of healthcare or improve the efficiency at the last mile. So there's a lot of infrastructure which is out there, but how does one ensure that there's accessibility, affordability and quality of healthcare when it comes to remote, rural, vulnerable populations? So that's the second one. The third space that we are engaged in is in the clean drinking water space. So today almost 60% of Indians would still drink water from an untreated source. And how do you ensure that you get clean drinking water out to large parts of rural India or in the slums and resettlement colonies in urban locations where you don't have piped water access, where access itself could be an issue, where women may travel long distances, right? So how do you ensure that you create community level solutions both for filtration and distribution, but at the same time make it sustainable? So it's a, I would say it's a social enterprise that we have kind of route that we have taken, and the idea is to make it sustainable, not just depend on grant funding or on donations. And the fourth area that we work in is on women's empowerment. Within women's empowerment, I would say it's a very specific area where we are trying to work with rural women to help them improve their economic earning capacity. So we run a rural BPO in Junjunu, near Junjunu, in a remote part of Rajasthan, where we do work for corporates, where we do work for non-profits, other foundations, data entry, voice-based services, like any BPO, with the same level of quality, with the same level of productivity and turnaround times, but at a cost which is significantly lower. At the same time, it helps these women graduate their skills and so earn better in a way that they can support their families. So those are the 4 broad areas that we've been engaged in.
But so you have these water dispensing ATMs.
That's right.
That sounds a little interesting.
Yes.
So how do you, if I have to get say 5 liters of water, so how do I go there and how do I fetch water?
So the water ATM is a concept like a bank ATM, right? It's a standalone modular installation. It's not connected to necessarily the bank, the head office of the bank, right? The idea emerged from 2 or 3 things that we observed. One, women had to travel almost a kilometer or kilometers and a half to fetch water in rural areas. So how do you eliminate distance for the lady of the house who can do deploy her time better? In urban slums and resettlement communities, typically the source of water tends to be tanker water. And if you look at any of these communities, when the tanker arrives, there's such a mad scramble to get your share of water, resulting in fights, obviously, resulting in maybe getting a lower share of water. And at times, because you don't know when the tanker is going to arrive, the people are just kind of staying at home, hoping that they'll get their share and losing a day's wages. And losing a day's wages, 150–200 rupees. Now, And at the end of the day, the quality is not yet certain.
Yeah.
It's not certain at all. So you still end up incurring medical expenses, right? Now, combination of these three things led to the development of the water ATM. So the water ATM, as I said, is a standalone modular device. So it works on solar power because large parts of India don't have grid power. So it works on solar power. There's a tank, obviously, which stores the water, which gets cleaned and refilled at regular intervals depending on the offtake of water, because water beyond a certain number of hours is not fit for consumption. So you would flush it out and fill it with fresh water. So there is a tank, and essentially because there is a local supply of the tank, it works on solar, so it's 24/7. I could work in my weaving shop through the day, come at night at 9 or 10 in the night and still get my 5 liters of water. I don't have to stand in queue, right? So it's my call when I want to fetch the water. And it's not manned, so it works with a prepaid swipe card. So like an ATM card, I would have a swipe card that Sarvajal would provide to potential customers. It would be loaded, let's say, with 10 rupees, 50 rupees, 100 rupees, whatever you can afford, not great amounts, which you can top up at a local Kirana store, right? And the moment you swipe the card, it will say your balance is 45 rupees. You're taking 5 liters of water at, let's say, 50 paisa, it will deduct 2.5 rupees from your card, the balance stays on it. That data is transmitted immediately to Sarvajal, so you always are keeping track of every customer, the balance on his or her card and how much is left. And it will display that. So the customer gets to see that, yes, I have 40 rupees on my card still. So there's no cash transaction. We are then eliminating the possibility of overcharging by the local franchisee.
Correct.
Because it's very easy that no one is around. Let me charge 2 rupees because she's in dire need for water. That gets eliminated.
For a conglomerate like Piramal, which has its presence in healthcare to reality, there are a variety of businesses. But I would like to know what is that the group ensures to see that there is sustainable business along with sustainable environment and responsible business.
Right, interesting question. So to answer that, I would step back and really talk about the overarching purpose of the group. And the overarching purpose of the group, as we have articulated it, is really doing well and doing good. And what causes a positive change in society. I think CSR or the social element of business is one element of sustainability. And if you look at sustainability, we are really talking about financial indicators, economic indicators, we're talking about social indicators, and we're talking about environmental. And all these have to go in tandem to really make it a sustainable business. So yes, there is a team within Piramal Enterprises which focuses on the environmental aspects. So if you're running a plant, how do you ensure lower energy consumption, waste treatment, so on and so forth, which are the environmental factors that we would be engaged in. But I mean, if I come back to, for instance, something like Sarvajal, I would say that something like Sarvajal, because it's catering to an ultimate household, is also helping eliminate plastic, because then I'm not buying bottles, bottled water, where I am then junking the plastic. So I am helping somewhere eliminate the use of plastic. So unless you kind of put all these elements together, you will never have a sustainable business. And I would say beyond the foundation, which started 8 years ago, the promoters, the Piramal family, have been in philanthropy for, I would say, close to 100 years or more. So it's not something which is of recent origin. And I think that understanding or that sensitization from a business family to social issues, I think makes for a great combination.
As you spoke about the family being very sensitive to social issues, how does the employee group here or your employees take this part as? How is their engagement in social activities?
Sure. So one is the employees within the foundation who are obviously committed to the kind of work we do. We have close to 2,000 employees in the foundation.
That's a nice number.
It's a large number. and yes, who are obviously engaged in it day in and day out. But what we have started doing for, I would say, about 2 years now, is starting an active employee volunteering program, where we are reaching out to employees at all levels, and really kind of helping them understand what kind of social issues we face as a society, not just in the foundation. And that's not just the work of the foundation, yes, that's one element, but also helping them understand. Someone may say, I'm very keen about disadvantaged children, or I'm very keen about knowing about the rural poor and what we can do, or about old age. I mean, our team in China, for instance, has been consistently supporting an old age home in China. Now, because that's their kind of something they kind of feel very strongly about, and that's fine. I think the employee volunteering program that we started is today expanding much more than what we had 2 years ago. So more and more employees are really volunteering time on weekends, on weekdays, on causes that we identify. So what we do is we have what I would call champions across every location, right? Community champions across every location, who would then talk to local sets of employees. They will identify the causes that they want to volunteer for, and we will, as a foundation, then help them identify the good NGOs in, let's say, Mahad, in Ennore, in Hyderabad, wherever they might be based, and then kind of make that connect.
I would like to know, how do you go about your impact assessment, the project impact assessment of your projects? Do you think it is measurable?
Right. It is measurable. I don't think that's really up for discussion. What are the right measures is something that you always will struggle with. I think there are measures which are quantitative that you can, so if I say learning levels, are learning levels improving in government schools where we are engaged? And that's a very clear measure, because the agency will come and do a baselining, they will do an end-line assessment, they will measure on language and maths, and they'll say how are levels improving. And that's a very quantitative metric that you can live by. But there's also a qualitative measure of what your intervention is leading to. So everything can't be defined in number terms, but is, for instance, a community changing behavior or its orientation towards clean drinking water? Now, you can't measure that. You might say that, okay, instead of 5% of households using this service, now we have 25%. You can try and translate that into measurable terms, but at times there are some of those soft elements as to how that change is happening, which you need to kind of keep getting a sense of. You can't keep necessarily measuring that. Having said that, because our entire planning, our entire approach is now moving to much more of an outcome-based approach, we have been engaging with independent agencies. So in education, we work with an organization called Educational Initiatives, which is an assessment agency which works only in education. So they will come in at the beginning of the year. They will randomly select schools that they want to measure. So there's a control sample, there's a treatment sample. So schools where we work, schools where we don't work, right? Because you have to have a comparable set. They will come in at the end of the year and again do a test. These are tests we have no control over. They will define what is the difficulty level that they want to test for, and so on and so forth. And then they will tell us the results, saying control schools where you are not working have improved by X%. Y set of schools where you are working, you have improved by X, or maybe 1.5x or 2x, whatever that number be. And that becomes a very independently verified score that I can then use in either designing or redesigning my program, or to go to partners and donors to say this is the result of what we are doing, right? So it's important that you do independent impact assessment. Similarly, in health, we have started that. We're working with the Public Health Foundation of India. So I think everyone has internal metrics. I think it's easy for us to kind of say, okay, this is what has happened during the tenure of our program. But to get it independently verified through a rigorous mechanism, which is completely objective, I think has its own importance in the scheme of things.
There has been a recent case wherein funds were siphoned from the CSR funds in a rural area close to Mumbai.
Okay.
I would like to know, do you think we need strict laws? Because so far we don't have anything which says, this is a lawful activity. How do we monitor per se from the government side? Do you think we need such laws which will, say monitor every activity and say, okay, this is lawful activity and we can avoid such malpractices?
So I think 2 or 3 thoughts on this. One is this kind of corruption that you say happens in the project. One is, I would say that's an exception. That's my personal view. Having said that's an exception, I think when corruption happens at a project level, I don't think it has anything to do necessarily with the character of the project, which may be a CSR project. That can happen in any project. So I think to say this is the bane of CSR, I think is jumping the gun at this point of time. Secondly, I think you asked about laws and do we need stricter laws. I think we always have had laws. The challenge might be in the implementation of those laws. So when it comes to something like corruption or embezzlement of funds, there are laws to deal with that. Whether it's any commercial project or a CSR project, the law is the same, and how you apply the law should not really change, right? So as I said, the character of the project, which may be a CSR project, does not necessarily come into play here. Having said that, is that happening in a big way? I would tend to say not. Someone chooses not to ensure that funds are being utilized and projects are being implemented in the right fashion, I think that company or that committee is doing so at its own peril. The law will still expect them to do that very, very diligently. So I think there are checks and balances within the structure today, within the Companies Act, within what SEBI requires you to do in terms of corporate governance, in terms of the reporting at the end of the year. The chairman of the committee has to sign off what has happened and how money has been utilized. So I think the checks and balances are there. I think these kind of local incidents in terms of corruption, yes, you will have the black sheep once in a while, and I think there are laws to handle that. I don't think it's a specific issue only of CSR.
Okay. Now talking about the other mandate, I mean, which 2%, do you think we need stricter legal framework to ensure that the 2% is spent? And do you think penalization is the way ahead?
I think it's, again, early is my view. The reason I'm saying that is because let's understand that India is the first country in the world which has a mandated CSR law, right? So having implemented that last year, having told companies that you have to devote 2% of your funding or profits to CSR, I think we have made a beginning that I'm sure the world is looking at. Yes, we have left it as a self-regulatory thing. Many companies have not fulfilled that 2% criteria. I think that's very clear from the reporting that has happened. But I think to jump into a penal provision immediately within a year's time, 2 years' time, I think is to my mind a little putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to create an ecosystem where companies start thinking about CSR not as an obligation, but as something which benefits their business at the end of the day, which benefits the community, because all of us exist in that community. And unless you create that ecosystem, help them think differently, and then help them understand how projects can be designed and be implemented, I think starting to penalize them is really going to be taking it in a very different direction. I think it's very early to even talk on those lines.
Okay. We would like to know what difference has the mandate brought in terms of budget and also in terms of voting ways for the CSR activities. The
foundation has been doing activities much before the 2% CSR law, right? So all along the company and the family have been committed to social issues. As I said, not just 2007 when the foundation was started in a structured form, but even earlier. Having said that, what we are investing in these initiatives through the foundation today is far beyond the 2%. If you look at the 2% requirement for the last financial year, that I'm talking about 14-15, it was actually negative. It was zero requirement because under the rules it has to be an average of 3 years profits.
Right.
The average of 3 years profits was actually a negative number.
Okay.
So there was no requirement of 2%.
Okay.
But despite that, the company invested a large share of its resources in the foundation and its activities. So for us, frankly, at the Piramal Foundation, the Piramal Group, the 2% has not changed anything in terms of how we approach the work of the foundation, in terms of the resources that we commit, in terms of the rigor that we have put into the work that we have done. Yes, there are certain mandatory things like the CSR committee and so on and so forth, the reporting that you have to go through, but I think that's a very natural extension of the work that you do.
Okay.
So for us, it really hasn't made any difference in terms of financial commitments. Our commitments have kept growing by the year and they'll continue to.
You as a professional have been on the business side, the commerce side of the business earlier at HDFC. We would like to know what is the difference that you feel coming here in the social side of the business now?
At that point of time, I used to also be involved in kind of spearheading our initiatives on rural insurance because that was a mandate for the company.
Okay.
And we used to work with microfinance institutions, with NGOs. I think that gave me a much better understanding of, at times, the reality which we are not exposed to. What can I do to help some of the other disadvantaged constituents to have a better future is where that drive really came from. And that's when I kind of decided to move into this sector in 2012.
And how do you find it?
Very exciting. As I said, the challenges of making change happen here are much more daunting. And to that extent, I think anyone who loves a challenge should be in this sector.
Oh. What does CSR mean to you?
I will go back to the original purpose of the group, and which is really doing well and doing good and making a positive contribution to society. For us, it's underpinned by our values of knowledge, action and care. And that really means that CSR, if it means bringing about change in any of the social issues that you are engaged in, you have to back people. You have to back them not just with money but with your unstinted support. While you're backing them, there will be a risk of failure, but how do you learn from those failures and still innovate to come up with better solutions? I think to me that is the role of CSR. As I said, much more strategic than taking a very project-oriented view.
Okay. It was really nice talking to you, so thank you for giving us your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.